This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
If you've got $88,000 and you want to go off-road and in a hybrid car, this is one of the options. My name is Victor.
I'm Nile. This is the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. Let's hit the road.
So this is the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. It has a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine plus electric motors to put out 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. This is basically V8 torque from last generation.
It really is. And, let's talk first about just the looks of this thing. It is a monumentally better looking vehicle than the outgoing Grand Cherokee. And when I see it, I think this thing is huge. Like, it is miles bigger, but in reality, it's only a couple inches longer. The wheelbase is a little bit longer and it's a little bit wider. So not that much bigger overall compared to the outgoing Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, they have switched out the old Mercedes platform
Yes.
to the new Alfa Romeo platforms. It's way better. It drives way nicer. Yep. It's no longer an old Mercedes M-Class.
Yeah, and even the engine's built in Italy as well. So they really are taking the new Stellantis, all the DNA that they've got going on to build a new vehicle really from the ground up. And we'll be talking about that on the road. As tested those, we talked about at the beginning, this is $88,000 as configured in Canada, about $75,000 in the US. I think it's a lot of money. When you think about plug-in hybrids, mid-size SUVs, with this kind of money, you're looking Mercedes, BMW. I don't quite think we're at that point with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is not economy class,
No.
offering either. It's somewhere in between. But in terms of the price point, it just seems like it's a little steep for what it's offering.
It is, and yeah, we got a lot of options on here. This Trailhawk is the only option if you're looking for the Trailhawk. You have to go with the 4xe. You cannot get this in the regular ICE-only version, but we do have a lot of options on here, so it does kind of add up to the price. We've got tons of things like the air ride suspension, night vision. We've got the rear entertainment, which doesn't come on this trim in the US, which is kind of interesting. Usually we're the ones that get the wrong end of the stick here, but in the States, try to get one of these, no bueno. You got to go with a higher trim to get the rear entertainment. But I think it's a nice looking vehicle, good improvement over the previous one. We drove I think I drove 6 of the previous generation Grand Cherokee, so I was so happy to finally get behind the wheel of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. This looks much better. What do you think about the blue?
Well, the blue certainly stands out, right? That's Jeep's foray into their plug-in hybrids. We saw that when we drove the Wrangler plug-in before. So the trail-rated badging, the Grand Cherokee badging, all that's all got a blue accent to it. The Trailhawk here comes with a matte sort of sticker that goes on the hood. Jeep says to help if you're off-roading to prevent some glare coming into the windshield, but then you've got the Trailhawk badge on there. I like it. I mean, especially in this dark blue paint, they call it like a midnight blue. It is a good contrast. I think it stands out well, and it looks pretty classy.
Yeah, speaking of off-roading, this is one of the few hybrid off-road SUVs that you get in the market, and it's got big off-road tires. What do you think this package is going to be like for customers that like off-roading?
Yeah, you're definitely going to be wanting this if you do off-roading. If you're on the road all the time, you're average guy going to the mall shopping, things like that, don't buy this one. You have the Meteor tires. They are a little bit louder on the road, a little bit harsher road feel, but you do get some off-road stuff that you wouldn't get normally. You've got a front disconnectable sway bar, which could be good for off-roading. It does have Jeep's legendary 4x4 system, and it works completely electric as well, which is fantastic. You have a slightly higher ground clearance on this vehicle, and then the air ride suspension allows you to bring the ride height up. If you do need to go off-roading with it, you do have that option. Blue recovery hooks on the front and the back are a nice touch as well.
Yeah, I feel like if you want something that you could go off-roading as well as a comfortable daily driver, this would be one of the good options. Otherwise, you would just go for a Wrangler.
Exactly. And, you know, we've driven enough of the Wranglers as well. It is a vehicle for people that really want to do off-road kind of stuff. It's not a great on-the-road vehicle. This is a good mix. You're right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's right.
But before we hit the road, I want to talk a little bit about the powertrain as well as the hybrid system on this. That's one of the reasons why you're going to be buying this. I figure because there is no, again, Trailhawk ICE version, so we can't compare apples to apples pricing. This is about $9,000 more expensive than if you were to go with a similarly equipped Grand Cherokee. You're getting a 17.3 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. You have up to 6,000 pound tow capabilities with it. And Jeep says you'll do about 42 kilometers or 26 miles of fully electric. We'll talk about that on the road. So far, it's been pretty good, but I think that is, again, a bit of a steep price to get 40-ish kilometers of electric range.
That's right.
With all that said, I think it's time we hit the road. Let's get behind the wheel and talk about the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe Trailhawk.
Let's get going.
All right, so before we hit the road and talk about the actual drive and ride, I do want to talk about the rear seats here because I think it's important. I mean, you're spending $85,000, $86,000. You want to be, enjoying the rear seats here, especially if you've got kids or if you're maybe being chauffeured around. Now, yes, the Grand Cherokee does come as an L, which has a third row, but this is the 2-row, the more traditional Grand Cherokee. We've got the rear entertainment system back here, and they actually work surprisingly well. This is what I've been talking about now for years. This is how these should work. These are actually essentially Amazon Fire TVs attached to the back of the car. So I was able to sign in. You have to have a data connection, so Chrysler does offer one, but it's not activated here. So I just used my Wi-Fi tethering, but I've got access to everything: Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime, obviously, everything like that. I can actually see the map as well from back here, and I'm wondering if I can go and maybe put in a destination. If I want to go get something to eat, I maybe can ask my driver if we can do that. So there's some good stuff that you can do back here, and it works pretty well. Both touchscreen as well as a remote. You've got both options. You've also got HDMI input, which is great. So if you wanted to plug in a different device, for example, we've done videos connecting Xbox to these types of vehicles before, so chances are it should work. You've got USB-C to charge your device, as well as a headphone jack. Now that's the only thing. It seems to be bring your own headphones. They do not have them built in or do not have them with the vehicle, just the remotes to be able to control everything. So that's the only thing that you're going to have to bring yourself, because otherwise you can't hear anything. Couldn't tell you how it sounds, but it actually works pretty well. So I was able to go in and search the map here. I was able to find somewhere I'd like to go. If I click plan here on the screen, send to driver, look at that. Let's go to McDonald's and get some ice cream. So but there's some good stuff in there. So you can have some data about the vehicle like we've seen on previous Chrysler products like the Pacifica. You've got an Are We There Yet mode, so you can see how close you are to the destination, but pretty good stuff back there. I'd say the only miss, aside from, the overall comfort's okay and space is good, window shades are fine, no 3-zone climate control. You've just got vents and USB as well as heated seats back here, but I think a third climate zone at this price point would have been nice. But let's hit the road.
So driving this Grand Cherokee 4xe, first off, we're starting in fully electric mode. This car, as mentioned, we can get 40 or so kilometers out of the 17 kilowatt hour battery. The electric motor itself produces a little over 130 horsepower and plenty of torque. So right now I'm fully electric and I'm getting up to speed just fine in the city. But when you need some more power and when you need to go a little bit faster, it kicks in the engine. Just like that. And however, in fully electric mode, even though it doesn't completely restrict your car in electric only, it turns the engine right back off as soon as you don't need it with enough charge. So that's quite a neat feature. I would still prefer it to have a dedicated, fully electric mode where nothing interferes, it just stays in electric. I feel like a little bit more control over that would be nice. However, I'm happy with this setup as well. Now, changing things to the hybrid version, or the hybrid mode, now it gives you all 470 pound-feet of torque and 375 horsepower. So once this light turns green, let's see how that feels a little bit. Well,
There we go.
There we go. It's very preppy in terms of the the power. I think the combination of having electric motors for the low end torque as well as the engine turbo power coming in after a second or two is good for daily ease of use of this type of vehicle. Sometimes you want a little bit more power overtaking on the highway or something like that, then it's great. What I would say with this powertrain is it feels like Jeep has done a good job making this powertrain. However, I feel like there's a little bit more refinement needed.
Yeah, the one thing that I've noticed, and it was even when we drove the Wrangler 4xe before, is the transition from gas to electric or vice versa can be jittery. There's a bit of a rough feel to it, and then I find that the overall acceleration is good there, but like again, that transition can kind of be a little wonky. So I've tried to drive this as fully electric as possible. It's good to be able to drive it in town and all that, so I don't feel it too much, but I still do feel there's a bit of a delay, bit of a hiccup there getting into the transition between both modes.
That's right. But moving on to the chassis of the car, this is a much welcomed improvement over the last generation. The last generation had a really clunky and heavy chassis and steering and all that type of stuff, but this time around they've done a much better job at creating a nice, smooth, relatively agile, very comfortable chassis. So this is a great improvement over the last generation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we drove tons of Grand Cherokees, as we mentioned in our intro. That really felt like a Tonka truck, bulky and plasticky and just like not very nice to drive. This is a lot more refined. This is like a Hot Wheels, a little bit more streamlined, some more metal involved, and you're going to want to play with it a lot more than you would with a Tonka. And it does show. I mean, the interior here is pretty nice overall, quite spacious. Is it premium? It's kind of on the borderline there. It's certainly not luxury, but they have done a great job to improve it. And again, when I see these on the road, I think that they are huge. They just look massive compared to the old one, and I just think it's because Jeep has gotten the design language so good with this generation that even though it isn't a whole lot bigger, they've been able to sculpt the design so much better, taking advantage of this newer platform to make it a much better, much more efficient type of vehicle overall, and I do like it. This is a huge step up over the previous gen. But this is the first time I've sat in the back seat driving around. I do feel the bumps a little bit more. I'm not sure if the Grand Cherokee L with a little bit longer wheelbase would help with that, but it's not too bad overall. We haven't driven tons of mid-size crossovers or SUVs in the last little while. Most recent ones would have been things like the Honda Passport or even the Mazda CX-90. This is kind of in line with the CX-90, whereas it was a little rougher, not quite as refined, and a lot of that is probably attributed to the fact that this is the Trailhawk. So go with one of the other trims that isn't off-road oriented, you're going to have a better on-road experience. But compared to some of the other vehicles out there in the market, say like GMC's AT4s, I find that they're really loud and kind of rough on the road. So this is a little bit better than that. So you're getting a good mix. I mean, if you really do off-roading, not necessarily climbing Moab, but if you are going to be doing some trails, things like that, you go to the parks, go to the cottage, maybe you've got an unimproved road there, then this could be a better option for you to give you a little bit better control off-road.
So driving this a little bit more now, one thing that's very interesting that Stellantis has taken the approach of is that the electric motors are actually connected to the 8-speed transmission. So accelerating even in EV mode, you do feel that the electric motors are changing gears, which is quite an interesting feeling, as most other vehicles, most other offerings on the market has very complex drivetrains, like a 2-speed for the electric motors and then an 8-speed for the engine, so on and so forth. But this is all connected, which is quite interesting. However, the transmission is nothing too special. It's appropriate for this car. It's not clunky in a sense, but at the same time, the paddle shifters is something that you really would never want to use. Clicking it does the job, but the sensitivity and the reaction time is average.
I think it's time we swap around. I'll get into the driver's seat. I'm kind of tired sitting back here, so let's pull over and we'll see what I think of the drive.
All right.
Before I talk about what I think of it, Victor's going to talk about the passenger screen that comes on this vehicle, because it's actually something that we don't really see ever in these cars.
I am not aware of many other offerings on the market, especially in this segment, that offers a passenger display as standard in Canada. The only one I can think of is the new Cayenne from Porsche that has an optional passenger display, but that's well over double of this car would be.
Yeah, it's like starting price is like 150,
that's
right?
So it's really cool because the passenger display is just for the viewing of the passenger. The driver would not be able to see it even if it's turned on.
I can see it a little bit, but not like it's barely usable. I mean, I couldn't use it, but yeah, you can just see a little bit. But the idea is it's meant for the driver not to see it so that I don't get distracted.
Yeah, and I can see information like navigation, where we are, although I can also just look at the center screen for the navigation.
Yeah.
But mainly, I can watch my own movie here while I'm on a road trip, relying on Nile to drive me to my destination, which is something that's pretty cool to have, and usually only the people in the back seat would have this sort of function. But now I can be the passenger and not the navigator.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting approach because we don't, again, as you mentioned, we don't see that, and it works pretty well. I mean, you do have essentially everything that the rear seats have. When we drove the Pacifica last, we used the main Uconnect 5 screen to set up the movies and stuff in the back seat. You can still do that from the passenger screen, which is nice. But yeah, you get to watch your own stuff too, which is good because sometimes you want to just kind of relax. Maybe you've got 3 kids, right? You don't have enough space to put them all in the back seat, so one of them sits up front with you. They want to watch some movies while you're on a trip or whatever. You got the option. So I think it is a good feature to have. Again, bummer in the States if you're buying this trim, you don't get the rear entertainment screens, but at least having that, it seems to work pretty well, and it's responsive enough. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm very impressed with this new system, the Uconnect 5. Everything is quite snappy. I'm happy with the responsiveness, and I think over the past couple of years, manufacturers have really stepped up their game in terms of the software, the experience that the driver as well as the passenger have with the screens. Nowadays, all of the cars have so many screens, and it's a huge part to a car now that if it's laggy or not smooth, it takes away hugely on the experience. So I'm happy with the responsiveness, and I think it's a little bit complex to start, but once you get used to everything, it's functional.
Yeah, and it works. That's one of the standout features of it. It's good that we also have buttons for a lot of things. All the HVAC controls, except for sync, are all physical buttons. There's buttons everywhere. So I do like that. We're not going 100% screen, which is good, at least for me. I know some people don't like it. We do have a digital rear view mirror system. We're starting to see that across the board. Is it the best? It's not too bad. I mean, the video quality is pretty decent. I find that if even the slightest amount of gunk gets on it, it just messes up the screen completely. So you want to make sure it is clean. But there's a nozzle to be able to clean it off, as well as the front and rear cameras have jets to be able to clear off any dirt and things you might get on it. Good for snow. So overall, that's good. 360 cameras are pretty decent on this. But the one thing I really want to touch on has just been the overall electric driving experience for me with this vehicle. I've spent as much time in EV mode as I could. Currently, we've done about 312 kilometers. 132 of them have been fully electric. And the only thing I've noticed is I had reset my trip computer because I want to see exactly how efficient it can be in town. It still is giving me a liters per 100 kilometers, even when it was saying it was in fully electric mode. So I don't know if somebody out there has spent more time with this. Maybe is it sort of like what the US miles per gallon equivalent is? So is Chrysler giving us a rough idea of how much the equivalency would be? But I mean, currently, we're sitting at 8.8 liters overall. The fuel test that we did, our 100-kilometer test loop, was 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers. So it still is a little bit on the high side. I would like to see that number a lot lower. And I really don't think that I've done 8.8 liters for these 300 kilometers that I've done. That means I've done 24 liters of driving, and we're only not even a quarter of the way down through the tank. So I'm not quite sure how accurate that is, but for the most part, I mean, it works. The electric portion has worked out for me, going back and forth to drop my kid off at school, doing errands and groceries around town. no problems whatsoever. Plugging it in, you know, even at home on the level 1 that comes with it, yeah, it's a 13-hour charge from empty, but I've calculated that out. Even at peak hours, it's cost about $2.50 to charge this car, you know, from 0 to 100 in the worst case scenarios at home. So, you know, $2.50 to go about 40 kilometers. Yeah, you put $2.40 of gas in your car, you could probably go about that. So, you know, it's kind of right up there. If you're going off peak hours, you're looking at about $1.20, which is a lot better to get about those 40 kilometers of range.
Yeah, this car is perfect if you have a short commute to work. You know, every day you do 30, 40 kilometers.
Yep.
It's perfect because you can mainly put the car in electric mode, and it would give you great fuel economy because you're not really using the engine. However, if your drive is mostly a long haul or, you know, longer road trips type situation, then this car doesn't really give you as good of fuel economy as people generally have impression on hybrid vehicles.
Yeah, and especially for the cost, right? If it is going to cost you about $9,000, we did this years ago when I featured the Ford Explorer hybrid. It was about a $5,000 difference. I said you would have to drive that car almost 300,000 kilometers just to see the fuel savings between the two. This one, obviously, if you're charging it a lot more, you do a lot more in town, you'll be able to get those savings a lot quicker, but it's, I mean, not like a cost perspective that makes sense to go with the plug-in unless, again, you're really in town. Like for me, I think it would be good because so far it has worked out pretty well with the electric system. It's definitely a win for me.
That's right. With that said, this is currently the most powerful offering that the Jeep Grand Cherokee offers. And, you know, if you want something with more power, like what you got when in the V8 from last generation, without the soundtrack, obviously.
Yeah.
And fuel economy of the V6, then this would be a good option.
Yeah, and overall, that's how we'd put it. You know, this has been a good week with this vehicle. If you're in the market for a Grand Cherokee, this certainly is the best generation that they've come out with. But I think it's still just a little pricey. I mean, you're going to be looking at this type of vehicle if you've already got some sort of Mopar in your garage, you're looking to make an upgrade. But I think it is going to be a bit of a tough sell for people who are more EV oriented, somebody who wants a plug-in hybrid. I think that the cost is just going to be prohibitive just because you're not getting any rebates on this at this price point. And I think even at the base model for the Trailhawk at $75,000, it's already more than what the rebates would be. So no rebates at all on this vehicle. You're getting HOV lane access, and again, slightly better fuel economy if you're in town.
Yeah, in Canada you don't get any rebates with this car. However, in the States, I think you still do get some tax credits. At this price point, you have quite a lot more options in terms of, you know, plug-ins and premium vehicles that you may just want to spend a couple $1,000s more and get one of those instead.
Agreed, 100%. But that's about it for this episode of Test Drive. If you have any questions about our video here, or you want to talk to us, we're always in the comments. You can leave a comment below. Don't forget to give a thumbs up to the video and let us know what you thought of it. Overall, we try to get back to everybody as quickly as we can. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care.